Yeah. Well, mother of God. Wow. My friend Austin used to work at a music store setting up all kinds of instruments, and he and I got to talking about the difference between expensive instruments and inexpensive instruments. And I was really interested to hear his take. It was really similar to my experience with woodworking tools, that having the right understanding about how to properly set up an instrument is a lot more important than the actual dollar value. But if you have someone who knows how to really set up and tune an instrument, a beginner is going to have a really hard time telling the difference between a very expensive instrument and a cheap one. So I decided to put that theory to this test. I went on Facebook Marketplace and found this $500 octave mandolin. I'm gonna need a pick, and it's a little out of tune. This has everything that Austin said that it would need for it to be a great instrument. It has decent bones. We're going to replace a few parts and components and set it up properly. And after we do, I think I'm gonna have a pretty decent instrument on my hands, plus the satisfaction of knowing that I took this out of someone's closet and started playing it on a regular basis. The first thing that we need to do is work on the neck, and we wanna do that while it's under tension from the string. So we'll put a capo on the first fret, and then I'm going to push down the last fret. Right in here is about where we're going to want to have a tiny little 1/64th, and we have way more than that. So we're going to adjust the truss rod here. The truss rod can only really change like this part of the instrument. It doesn't change the whole thing. So up to about here is what we can kind of manipulate with this, but then up here is where we need to work on the bridge. So we want to get at the 9th fret, which is about the middle, which is the last place that's affected. We want it to be about 20 thousandths of an inch off of the fret. And so we're gonna adjust the truss rod back so that it can pull those back, pull the strings back. But I mean, the action on this was so high that it was almost unplayable. So hopefully we'll get it a little bit better here. So that's about there. I mean, it could come back a little bit more, but I don't know if it's going to be honest. So we're gonna call that good. And after we've adjusted the neck, then we go to the bridge. Because stringed instruments like this are under so much tension, and the bridge has got pretty small feet here, they tend to start kind of creeping this way a lot. And you can see here that this is no exception. It has crept over that way quite a bit. After we've adjusted the neck, we move on to the bridge work, and to do that, we have to take off the strings. But because these bridges are so funny this way, I'm going to use some tape to help me remember exactly where the bridge was so we don't get any other issues. Yeah. Well, mother of God. Wow. These strings are just so shot. It's also, they weren't put on there correctly, but no problem, we will fix. Having taken the bridge off, I can actually very easily see where it was before. So I can actually remove this tape because that will make it easier to clean. But tape is a good tip or trick if you're removing it from a less filthy instrument. And what we're gonna do is take some 220 grit paper, and we're going to put it right where the bridge was, and we're going to remove some material. I want to do it front to back because I don't want to accidentally roll over one side or the other, but I do want to be flipping it semi-regularly so that I'm putting equal pressure on both sides. And if you even see on the sandpaper, you can see I'm removing more material from one place than another, which is not that surprising. But I'm going to just remove a little bit because I want to bring that action down a tad. But because this is a flat-topped instrument too, we want to make sure that the feet are touching on the entire top and not just on one corner or another. But it sits nice and flat now, so we'll call that a win. As I run my fingers along this, it is catching on every single fret. So I'm going to file this back ever so slightly. Each one of these is filed on about a 45-degree angle. So we want to basically match that with the file. Okay, now that I've got this taped off, I want to just follow the same angle that we've already got on these frets and just give it a little file, which is going to make a little high spot on all of them, which is why I'm now going to take this 600 grit. And 600 grit paper doesn't really remove much of anything at all, so it's pretty safe to use. That'll remove all of that. Give it a go on the other side as well. So now that that's done, we'll pull all this tape off, and hopefully it didn't do too much damage with the file, but even if we did, no problem. We're looking for a more playable instrument, not a perfect finish. Though I'm sure luthiers have turned over in their graves about many of the methods that I've used. Now it's time to clean off the fretboard, get all of this, as Austin calls it, finger cheese off of here. So we're going to spray on some of this fingerboard cleaner, and ugh, this is so filthy. Austin says that if you don't have this kind of cleaner, you can also use naphtha, which is like basically like lighter fluid, is a cheaper way to go around about it. And it's because it's not harsh enough to actually take off the finish of any of this stuff. So now I'm going to use some 4/0 steel wool. And I'm basically just going to do a whole lot of scrubbing. Oh, here's a funny story. When I first started woodworking, my woodworking mentor said, pick up some 4/0 steel wool. And I had no idea what "aught" meant. And so I was looking for AUGHT steel wool everywhere. Turns out "aught" is short for 0. Now we're gonna change out the tuning pegs. I got these Waverly tuners from StewMac, and these alone will elevate this from being a meh instrument to a pretty fancy one. So we're gonna get this guy all saddled up here in our vise. So now comes the fun little thing of taking these off. Is it easy enough? Now, these new Waverly tuners have new little post things here, but as I took off the old tuners, there came with them some wood chips. So I've decided that that's not ideal. We'll just go ahead and put these tuners right in here and call it a day. And of course, because we care, we caulk the screws. Now for this last one, we need to drill a little hole. And give it a little drillsies. Make a quick pilot hole for that last screw. Not too shabby. Okay, so with the new tuners on, which by the way look absolutely stellar, and with these frets cleaned up and everything else kind of cleaned up, now we want to, well, actually there's still a little bit of schmutz on this a little bit. Let's just give this another little spritzel here. This was filthy, so it's not surprising that it needs it. Okay, so now we'll give this whole thing a little spritz of guitar polish and cleaner. We'll give her a little wipe down. The polishing cloth. We'll get it as good as we can get it, which honestly will be a lot better than it was. And last but not least, we'll put a little fingerboard oil on it. Ebony is an extremely dry wood, which which makes it very, very thirsty. Now, this is much nicer than before. Yeah, there we go. Better than before. Okay, well now for the good part, the fun part. So we're gonna put some phosphor bronze coated octave mandolin strings. The two best ones are GHS, and I couldn't find GHS for an octave mandolin, so here we are with D Adagio. This is the fun stuff. So we're gonna start with the G string. All right, the existing tailpiece, I just realized, is problematic. So we're gonna take this thing off and replace it with a new one because we don't wanna have any mishaps. If we want jokes, we can talk about this gaping butt joint right here, which I'm very pleased to say that the butt joint on the mandolin that I made is seamless, as can be seen right there. All right, like a glove. Put this bad boy back in there. There we go. Give that guy a poke. Now we start this whole thing over again. So we start with the G string there, where it's meant to be. We'll pull this tight. We're gonna go around the loop twice. Then we'll go through the top of the peg. Then we'll go up, and we in fact will not forget the bridge. We'll put that bad boy right back on there, just like it was. We'll stick on an E string so we can keep that bridge in place. Now, as we do this, we're still checking that this thing doesn't wiggle back out of square. The last thing that we have to do here is get this thing tuned up, and then we can play it and see if it works. But before we do that, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. If you want to see how I built this mandolin and get links to all the parts that I got from StuMac, you can head on over to my Squarespace website, annofalltrades.com. I've been using Squarespace to host my website since 2012 when I started my business. And so in addition to finding articles about my mandolin build, you can find all kinds of other things like other furniture projects, project plans, and of course all the homesteading stuff is there as well. Squarespace has been a fantastic resource for someone like me who's not super tech savvy, who just needs somewhere where they can easily drag and drop information from one place and then share it with the world. If you are interested in starting your own website, check out Squarespace. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/AnnofAllTrades for a 10% discount. Here we go. It's the moment of truth. Put this little... Honestly, it looks so much classier now too with the new tuners and the new little tailpiece there. Now let's just tune it up. Oh my Lanta! It already sounds so much better and is so much easier to play. The action is great. Ooh, I want to sit down. Let's see if we can get Adam to join us for a quick little ditty. I mean, it sounds great. It's like the voicing's good. The action is so much better. That's so cool. Well, 10 years in the making. I've wanted one of these ever since I heard The Fox by Nickel Creek, and now I have one. And we prettied it up quite a bit. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You can check out Adam's guitar and amp build, his very first woodworking project. That's coming up next, or soonish, and we'll see you there.